Coming up this week, do you agree with the idea of sanctuary cities? Also, should it be illegal for a parent to spank their child? This and much more to come. Hitting the streets, this is Outburst. Hello and welcome to Outburst. I'm Glenn McGuinness. Sanctuary city is a loosely defined term for a city that welcomes refugees and illegal immigrants looking to seek asylum. Toronto became Canada's first sanctuary city back in 2015, and recently the city of Montreal followed suit. This designation means undocumented refugees will have full access to local services. So, is this something that needs to be done, or does it just promote illegal immigration? Our question: do you support the idea of sanctuary cities in Canada?
You know, I've thought about it a lot, and you kind of support it and then you wonder. So I haven't made up my mind, really. You know, it's a dilemma to me because the people have to be looked after. But at what point are you looking after the wrong people, or are you creating problems that you don't even foresee? So I haven't made up my mind, tell you the truth. But I think about it.
I support people coming into Canada. Canada is very multicultural. I'd love to see more people. I'm a Dallas student, and I love seeing foreign people on campus because as a nursing student, I work with so many different diverse cultures, and I like being aware and seeing these different cultures in the community. It helps me open up, and that hopefully when I go into the nursing, I will know how to deal with specific situations. So as situational awareness, I love seeing different cultures in the community.
Yeah, I'm open to immigrants and refugees as long as they're being screened properly to make sure they're not terrorists or whatever they mean harm. But I mean, we're just looking for a place to live and have half decent living, right? So.
Okay, I believe that everyone should include refugees in the country. I also do believe that they should be spending federal money on said refugees because it's not very fair to bring refugees over to our country and then let them fend for themselves when they have no means to do so. And then I do believe that they should be treated equally as citizens, but by that I mean that they should be treated equally as citizens in the same way that everyone is respected as they were a Canadian citizen for their entire lives. So I respect some aspects of it, but not others.
I would have to say that, yes, I do support sanctuary cities. I think it's really important for people to feel safe and to have some kind of ability to be in a place where they feel comforted, safe, that they're not going to be persecuted for whatever reason. So, yes.
I think it's a good idea. Of course, if I was in a sanctuary city, I might have a different opinion, right? So it's the culture of Canada to welcome people and nurture and get them on their feet again. So as long as they do the proper vetting and we don't let those criminals in, yeah.
We have a responsibility as a first world country to take care of second world countries. A lot of people might not be aware of what's going on in the third world countries right now, as Canada hides a lot of it from us. But for sure, I think it's important for us to take responsibility for everyone. We're people. We're all in this together, so if one half of our world is suffering, the other half is going to suffer. Personally, that's what I think. That's how I feel.
That's an interesting question. I think I do support it, but I would have to say in some situations and only extreme situations, not necessarily in the state that it is in right now.
What do you mean by that?
I think, I'm also 18, so I don't really know much about sanctuary cities and politics like that, but I would say if to my knowledge, sanctuary cities are just cities where they allow illegal immigrants to stay without citizenship. I would say that has to change. Either there's going to have to be some sort of deportation or something like that, or they'll have to find a way to gain a path to citizenship. And I would like to see them find a path to citizenship rather than deportation, but it's going to have to be one or the other because we do need people to be in this country paying taxes, in my opinion.
But if most of them did intend to become legal citizens and pay taxes at some point within the next, 3 to 5 years, or even just within the first year to start taking steps to become legal, then I think the payoff would be coming recent, like close enough to it to offset it. But if they are coming here and not intending to ever become legal citizens, then I guess it would be more of an issue.
I definitely support the government supporting those who are fleeing crimes of war and who've had to leave their homes due to dire circumstances and otherwise are looking for a better life and a place to survive and often have a lot to give to the country, looking for a place of refuge. So I do support that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you know, with what's going on around the world today, I think Canada needs to be like it's always been, and as a safe sanctuary for people in need, especially with people crossing the border into the prairies and all that. I mean, people are walking a long time to get sanctuary out of the United States just because they're afraid for their own lives. You know, religion or race or anything shouldn't have any issues with what we're doing here in Canada with regards to giving people safe sanctuary. We should open our doors. I mean, you know, a lot of people are afraid that we might take in a terrorist, but there hasn't been any terrorist attack from refugees that I know of.
I think we should all do that, actually. I think all cities across Canada should be doing that until immigrants are processed and whatever form of processing that takes, that either they're deported or they're allowed to stay. I have no issue with any city doing that.
In which Canadian province would you find the village of Eyebrow? Nova Scotia, BC, or Saskatchewan?
Saskatchewan.
Nova Scotia?
Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan.
I'm going to go with Nova Scotia.
I'm going to say Saskatchewan.
You're absolutely right.
Okay, that's a surprise.
My eyebrows are raised right now. The village of Eyebrow, Saskatchewan is located roughly 70 kilometers northwest of Moose Jaw. It gets its name from the nearby Eyebrow Lake. Canada is facing a medical crisis as opioid overdoses continue across the country. BC's problem has gone from bad to worse, and the federal government has promised to give $10 million to the province to help with response times. So, what are your ideas to combat this problem? Our question: how should the federal government address Canada's opioid crisis?
Opioid crisis. Well, I think to begin, it's great to be preventative, of course, but the reality is that a lot of folks are already suffering from drug overdoses, and usually that's an extension of a dire circumstance of economic inequality and poverty. So that's an inevitable. It's already happening. So I think it's good to have centers where folks can be rehabilitated and have drugs to counteract those that do overdose, and then eventually start addressing the root problem, which is income inequality, which is increasing, especially in big financial centers like Vancouver.
That's a tough one. I think addiction counselling needs to grow, especially here in our province. We don't have a whole lot of addiction counselling. We need places where people can go, get help, get clean. If you can't get help and get clean, maybe we need to set up places where people can use in a safe environment as well. That's part of the problem as well. People reusing needles. There should be places that if people do have to use, any type of IV drugs, that they should have a safe place to do it.
So I do know there are a few places around Canada in larger cities, especially Vancouver, where they do have sanctuaries for people trying to recover and also people who are just dealing with addiction and trying to get over it. So instead of having drugs on the street, they have people go into a safe place where everything is sterile, so there's no spread of diseases or anything like that do come with administering drugs. So I think that is something that we could spread into cities more and just get better needle exchange programs around Canada.
Well, more research, maybe more clinics that people can attend. I know a lot of people are dying from different drugs, street drugs and things like that. So maybe more places where people can drop in if they need help, and more access to medical clinics and things like that.
That's a very difficult question. I'm not sure I know a lot about health policy itself, but I I think prevention is a good one. So I think I like the steps that they're taking in terms of prevention, putting out a lot of the antidote in the streets. And I mean, we've done all of the enforcement that we can do. There's that route, but it doesn't really help as much as education. And, you know, I'm always a big supporter of prevention in terms of social programming and bringing in from the front end support for teens and addicts. I think we have a real lack of supports for mental health issues, and that's a big root issue of the crisis.
Well, again, you know, it's something we're all thinking about, and we all, you know the implications of what's happening now. But, you know, coming up with that answer, it's not like just black and white, is it? You know, where are they getting it? Are the doctors, you know, writing too many prescriptions? Is it coming in from the southern borders? I'm sorry. And, you know, all those questions have to be answered. Where the hell is it coming from? You know, and why all of a sudden do we have so much of it? You know, and another thing is, how do you educate the young people? You know, you read in the news where somebody took an overdose and died. Wouldn't you think that would wake somebody up? And then they seem to decide to try it just to see if I'll die. You know, it's crazy, man. But it's a hell of a problem.
Well, I think they have to have more control for one, because there's a lot of drugs out there, especially this the stuff they're mixing with the opioid now. I mean, it's dangerous for the police and the public as well, right? So definitely could be addressed for sure.
Clearly, it's a huge problem. We're not addressing it properly because there are still people who are dying, unfortunately. Awareness, education, specifically amongst youth, so that it doesn't perpetuate itself. I think we just need more funding, more education, and we need to be a little more active and supportive in this area.
If you look at Europe and the way that they've dealt with their drug problems, I think it begins with decriminalization, because a lot of the problem with opioids and drugs in general is that people can't get help because they're scared to get help because it's illegal. So starting it out by decriminalizing it and letting people open up and get help is pretty much where I believe it starts.
Another thing is that, I don't know if you heard of naloxone. Naloxone is basically something that can be given if someone goes into opioid overdose. So maybe giving naloxone training in certain facilities, or to certain groups of people that might deal with people that have the potential for opioid abuse. So maybe just like rehabilitation centers, places like that, where you might have patients that might overdose on opioids, or not to generalize and say that these centers would have certain such patients, but just more training on that, and generally just more awareness. You know, I feel like we throw around the term opioid, but does everyone really know what it means? And does anyone really know what its potential harms are? So just spreading awareness, cutting off, really trying to cut off the supply, and just more training.
When did Canada legalize same-sex marriage? 2002, 2005, or 2007?
I'm going to say 2007.
2005. I'm gonna go 2002.
2005.
Maybe 2005?
2005.
It's 2005. You're knocking them right out of the park. On July 20th, 2005, Canada became the fourth country in the world to legalize same-sex marriage. The first three were the Netherlands in 2001, Belgium in 2003, and Spain just weeks before Canada on July 3rd, 2005. If you're a parent, disciplining your child may be one of the toughest things you ever have to do. But in the future, if you spank your child, you might be breaking the law. Bill S-206 is an act to amend the criminal code which removes justification in the criminal code to school teachers, parents, or people acting as parents in using physical discipline as a means of correction. Sweden was the first nation back in 1979 to ban corporal punishment, and since then, dozens of other countries have followed suit. But what about Canada? Our question. should it be illegal for a parent to spank their child?
Well, I got spanked, and I remember an incident where I went out on the harbor on a raft we built and got caught by my parents, brought back and spanked, and I never went again. So I don't think they should like hit them real hard, but spanking, my generation, that was a pretty common thing. You know, it's like getting strapped at school. You tended not to do it, at least in front of the teachers anymore, you know. So I would say limit it and people be responsible.
I think it's already pretty much there if you look at the nuances of the child protection laws, and I might know a little bit about that. You're not very far away from the Department of Community Services here. So technically, there are limits to that already in the laws, so I think it's already sort of there. And there's a little bit of judgment involved in terms of what people can and can't do, and that's appropriate, that there should be a judgment there, but essentially it's there.
Depends on the circumstances, depends on the child. And depends on what, you know, spanking, it depends how much force is used or whatever. It's just to sort of grab the attention or to you know, to show that you're an authority is the difference between just spanking for no reason. Sometimes somebody has to be in control and it should be the adult.
Oh, that's a good one. I don't think it should be illegal to spank. To the extent that if it doesn't leave a mark, because if you're leaving a mark, then it's too much. Then you're hurting the child. When a child's developing, to have those negative and positive reinforcements is really important. And if they do something really bad, that a spanking is necessary. It's that fear that they won't do it again. But if it is hurting the child, then it's never okay.
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think that some of us, unfortunately, grew up in areas where spanking was a kind of norm. It perpetuates the problem and the behavior. I think that's really dangerous. I would like to think that it wasn't. I don't know how that would be controlled or regulated, but I would like to think that it would be illegal. Yeah, it's a really tough issue, and I hear myself saying that, and I was someone who was spanked as a child, unfortunately, and, you know, I think it just leads to very bad behaviors.
Yes. What? I think I'm just, in terms of my own background, I was never spanked as a child, and I was disciplined appropriately, and I don't think it really teaches the proper lessons. I think you can learn without having to use your hands.
No.
Why not?
Well, you know, children sometimes need to be disciplined in order to learn how to interact in society. You know, can't have them running around, you know, acting crazy and doing things they shouldn't be doing. And if they've taught discipline in the home as a child, when they become older, they have respect for their elders and society.
It depends on, I guess, the nature of the spanking. Some people might have a tap on the bum. Some people it might be abusive. So if it's legal or illegal, there's no way to enforce that anyway. So that's why I say it's difficult to say.
I don't know if I'd go to the point of illegality, but I definitely don't encourage that type of discipline. I think it's incredibly important to motivate and discipline our children and give them direction, but instead to be a little bit more open to what their needs and their particular their desires and their goals are, as opposed to just physical assault in a way, if you will. Often children don't understand what they're doing is wrong, or are acting in a way that needs more attention or support from their parents. So I think parents need to be a little bit more in tune with where their children are at and find different ways to discipline them.
I think it depends on a few different things. It depends on A, like what they're spanking for, and then B, like if they do anything more than that. I don't think the actual act of like spanking a kid for something that's, you know, pretty bad is necessarily illegal or should be illegal. But I think that there is definitely like a line that if it's crossed, it becomes child abuse. And I think that line has to do more with, you know, kind of hitting and punching and or even like emotional sort of abuse for small or no reasons, right?
As a society, we're raising our kids to not have respect for our elders and for other people. I think there's a lot of, and I know, it doesn't come from spanking, but it does come from discipline. I think we shouldn't be afraid to discipline our kids. I'm a new parent, so it's something that me and my wife debate, but I think we have to discipline our kids more than we are. I'll put it that way.
I think that's a very controversial topic. I don't think it should be illegal. I think it should be at the parents' discretion. However, I think it should be used with caution because I do think it can cause problems in the kids, later in life. So I don't think it should be illegal, but I think it should be used cautionary.
I guess it depends on the degree of spanking. I don't think it should be illegal if it's depending again on the degree of the spank. If it's a little tap, no. If it's a severe beating, so it depends on what you define as spanking. So I'm in the middle. It depends on what a spank is, and that depends on who the person is.
During a parliamentary session, a lot of ground needs to be covered and a lot of issues are debated by our federal politicians. And while these issues may be important, there may be some voters who feel the issues they find important are being put on the back burner. So we sent our cameras out with this question: what issues do you feel are being overlooked in Parliament?
Well, I am extraordinarily disappointed that electoral reform has been shelved. I think that is something we really need to be talking about to re-engage the population with all of our issues in terms of government, because if people feel disengaged, and they have been, and the trend lines have been the same for this 10 years, then they're not going to actually bring forth the issues that the population cares about. And then people are going to run off with silly, ridiculous things like immigration tests that no one really wants or cares about in terms of the real population. So I think we need to properly bring that to the table. I think people need to be informed about it in advance, and so that we need to have a mechanism to re-engage folks into real democracy and participatory democracy.
Well, there's a lot, because I became a senior, I think about seniors a lot, and this particular Liberal government has done nothing for seniors, and there's so many of them living in poverty, Also, the armed service people that are retired. I met a fellow on the street. I was talking to him the other day. He said he had been in the war in Eastern Europe. And this guy, didn't have a jacket. So I don't have that jacket anymore, because I gave it to him. But there's issues like that, these social issues that, our Prime Minister really used on his plank for getting elected. I'm not sure that he's carried out the promises that he made.
Well, there's a lot of issues, like the fact that there's no work in Canada, which is a major issue. People can't find the jobs they need, and they keep bringing, all these policies in that stops people from actually starting up new projects and work. So, we're kind of, it's like shooting yourself in the foot. We need to get, we need more free trade with the U.S., like they say. Let's get some more free trade with the U.S. They need to change those trade deals, to make things happen, and let's get them done.
Right now, I happen to think that we're not preparing our roads for the legalization of marijuana that's coming up, and that's a really big problem in my view. It's a huge issue. I think that certainly there's been a task force, certain things have been put in place, but we're really slow on what's happening and what's unfolding, and so I really think that Parliament should be more, in some ways, active. I don't want to say reactive, because then that creates problems as well. I know that we need time for research to look into things, but I don't think that we're going to be prepared once legalization occurs, and I'm really fearful that it's going to cause more crashes and that more people are going to become victims to impaired driving.
I think the mental health crisis in Canada, I think the opioid crisis, which you spoke to earlier, I think are being overlooked. I'm really concerned about mental health services in Canada. Those are the two big health ones for me.
I think one of the biggest issues that's coming up that no one's really taking too big a stance on that I've heard lately would be job loss upcoming due to automation. That I think you're seeing at the federal level, like some people are looking at testing basic income programs and some things similar to that, which are kind of like the leading methods people are talking about in combating that, because even if it's just the transportation industry, based on US stats, that'd be 40% of the job market gone, and that's one of the easier ones to automate that's coming up through now. So we need to be more ready for that than people are talking about currently, I think.
Ooh, issues. So of course, Prime Minister Trudeau, one of his big campaign platforms was to better support the Indigenous communities and reserves here in Canada. And I think he started that conversation, but a lot of student activists and the people of that community and Indigenous peoples have found that he has not yet implemented those policies that he promised he would change and that are actually going to bring about real emancipation and support for Indigenous communities. So I think that would be the number one thing. In regards to feminism, he's a self-proclaimed feminist. It's great to be an icon and for someone else to look up to and admire, but I think he also needs to put that into action by tackling income inequality, better support for women in the workplace, maternity leave, different types of childcare. Paid childcare would also be a huge help for women who have to leave work and take care of their children. So things like that, I think, could be further addressed by our current government.
Overlooked in Parliament. I don't know if things are being overlooked. I think there needs to be more attention to some issues. So I think healthcare is in a real crisis. So I think that's an issue that needs to be given a lot more attention. That would be a prime one that I think about, actually, and maybe some more attention to the environment. I don't know if they're being overlooked. I think they're there, but I think they need more attention.
What is Canada's largest island? Baffin Island, Vancouver Island, or PEI?
That is a tough one. I'm not really sure. I'm going to go with Baffin Island on this one.
Gonna have to say Baffin Island.
PEI, Vancouver.
Baffin Island's the biggest.
Baffin Island?
It's Baffin Island.
Hey, that's pretty good.
You did well today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Take care. With an area of 507,451 square kilometers, Baffin Island is the largest island in Canada. That's all for this episode of Outburst. Like what you see? Well, you can watch more episodes on our website at www.cpac.ca, on our CPAC TV to Go app, and also on our YouTube channel. You can also join the conversation on social media through Twitter and Instagram at CPAC_TV. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of all my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.